Ladies and gentlemen, there is a principle we must understand: God's choices are deliberate, precise, and purposeful. He does not choose randomly or haphazardly. When God chooses you, it's because there's something unique within you that aligns with His grand design for humanity. Let me make this plain. When God selects a person, He marks their life with signs that not only confirm His calling but also prepare them for the assignment ahead. Today I want to share with you 7 undeniable signs that God has chosen you. God's choice is never random, and His selection is never without reason. Every person chosen by God carries a divine mandate, a purpose that fits into His eternal plan. It is critical for us to understand this: when God selects you, it is not merely to elevate you or to set you apart for recognition. His choice is tied to a specific purpose, the purpose that impacts not just your life but the lives of many others. You were chosen because there is something unique within you, something that this world desperately needs. Divine selection is not based on human qualifications or societal standards. It is not a result of your family background, education, or connections. Instead, God's choice is rooted in His sovereign will and His ability to see what others cannot. He sees your potential before you even recognize it yourself. He sees the gifts He has placed within you, the dreams He has written on your heart, and the impact you are meant to have. When God chooses you, it is a declaration that your life has significance, that you are part of something far greater than yourself. Now, let me make this clear: being chosen by God does not mean your life will be easy or without challenges. In fact, the opposite is often true. Those chosen by God frequently face extraordinary difficulties. Why? Because purpose attracts opposition. The enemy will not stand idly by while you step into your calling. He will try to discourage you, distract you, and convince you that you are not worthy. But let me remind you today, the very presence of challenges in your life is evidence that you are on the right path. The resistance you face is proof of the treasure within you. Consider the lives of individuals in Scripture who were chosen by God. Joseph was given dreams of greatness, yet he found himself betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison. Why would God allow such hardships for someone He had chosen? Because the process was necessary for the purpose. Each trial Joseph endured was a step toward his destiny. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, he was not just a dreamer, he was a leader, prepared by God to save a nation. When God chooses you, He often places a burden on your heart that is bigger than yourself. This burden may come in the form of a vision, a calling, or a deep sense of responsibility for a particular need or cause. It may feel overwhelming at times, and you may question whether you have what it takes. But let me assure you, God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He equips you with everything you need to fulfill the assignment He has given you. The size of the burden is a reflection of the size of the impact you are meant to have. Another sign of being chosen by God is the presence of favor in your life. Divine favor is not something you can earn or manufacture. It is a supernatural force that opens doors, creates opportunities, and positions you for success. This favor will often manifest in unexpected ways and in unexpected places. It may come through people you barely know or in situations that seem insignificant at first glance. But when God's hand is upon you, even the smallest opportunity can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Those chosen by God also possess a unique ability to see what others cannot. This is the gift of vision and ability to perceive possibilities and solutions that are hidden from most people. Vision is what enables you to see beyond your current circumstances and imagine a future that aligns with God's plan. It is what allows you to recognize opportunities where others see obstacles. This gift of vision is not just for your benefit, it is meant to guide you as you fulfill your purpose and inspire others to do the same. However, being chosen by God is not without its challenges. There will be moments when you feel inadequate, moments when you doubt your ability to fulfill the calling on your life. But it is in these moments of uncertainty that obedience becomes critical. God does not require you to have all the answers. He only requires you to trust Him and take the next step. Obedience is the key that unlocks the promises of God. When you say yes to His calling, even when the path is unclear, you position yourself to receive His guidance and provision. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see these signs in your life, do not dismiss them. Recognize them as evidence of God's hand upon you and His purpose within you. Being chosen by God is not about achieving personal success or gaining recognition. It is about fulfilling a divine assignment that will impact generations. So embrace the challenges, trust the process, and walk boldly in your calling. For the world is waiting for the gift that only you can bring. When God places His hand upon your life, it is not an invitation to comfort, but a call to preparation. One of the clearest signs that God has chosen you is the presence of uncommon challenges in your life. These challenges are not evidence of God's absence, they are proof of His work within you. The trials you face are not random, they are intentional, designed by the Master to refine, shape, and prepare you for the greatness He has destined for you. Think about it. Gold is purified in fire, diamonds are formed under immense pressure, and the strongest trees grow in the harshest conditions. In the same way, those chosen by God are often placed in circumstances that test their strength, endurance, and faith. This is not to break them, but to build them. The trials are not punishment, they are preparation. The pressure you feel is not a sign of failure, but of purpose. It is the weight of the treasure within you, the evidence that God is working something extraordinary through you. Consider the story of Job, a man described as blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned evil. Despite his righteousness, Job faced unimaginable suffering. He lost his wealth, his children, and his health, yet he remained faithful. Why would God allow such trials for a man who was so devoted to Him? Because Job's story was not just about his pain, it was about his purpose. Through his trials, Job became a testament to the sustaining power of faith and the unfailing goodness of God. His story has inspired countless generations, proving that even in the darkest moments, God's hand is at work. And let us not forget Joseph, whose journey from a favored son to a slave and then to a prisoner was filled with heartbreak and betrayal. His brothers sold him into slavery, and his master's wife falsely accused him, landing him in prison. To the outside world, it may have seemed that Joseph's life was spiraling out of control, but God had a plan. Each setback was a setup for His ultimate purpose. By the time Joseph stood as second in command of Egypt, he was not just a man with dreams, he was a man of wisdom, resilience, and leadership, prepared to save a nation. Uncommon challenges have a way of revealing what is inside you. They strip away pretense and expose the strength, character, and faith that lie beneath. They force you to rely not on your own abilities, but on God's power and provision. When you are chosen by God, your trials become your training ground. The very things that seem to be working against you are, in fact, working for you, shaping you into the person God has called you to be. Sometimes the challenges are not external but internal. You may wrestle with doubts, insecurities, or fears. You may question why God would choose someone like you, someone who feels so inadequate and unworthy. But let me remind you, God's strength is made perfect in weakness. He does not choose you because you are flawless. He chooses you because His power is revealed through your imperfections. Your struggles do not disqualify you, they qualify you for His grace. Think about David, the shepherd boy who became a king. Before he ever sat on the throne, David faced a lion, a bear, and a giant named Goliath. Each challenge was bigger than the last, but each one prepared him for the next. David's battles were not random, they were orchestrated by God to develop his courage, faith, and dependence on the Almighty. The pressure he faced as a shepherd equipped him for the responsibilities of kingship. The same is true for you. The challenges you are facing today are not the end of your story, they are the beginning. They are the tools God is using to shape you into the person He needs you to be for the assignment ahead. The pressure you feel is not there to crush you, but to create something extraordinary within you. So do not despise the trials. Do not shrink back in fear or frustration. Instead, embrace them as evidence that God is at work in your life. Trust that the one who has chosen you is also equipping you. He is using the fire to refine you, the pressure to shape you, and the challenges to prepare you. What you are going through is not a sign of God's absence, but a sign of His purpose. The greater the pressure, the greater the treasure. And when the time comes, when God's work in you is complete, you will see the fruit of your perseverance. You will stand as a testimony to the power of His grace and the faithfulness of His promises. The world will see what God saw in you all along, a person prepared, equipped, and ready to fulfill their divine calling. When God chooses you, He entrusts you with something that transcends your own abilities, dreams, and understanding. This is one of the most powerful signs of divine selection. You carry a burden that feels bigger than yourself. It is not a burden meant to crush you, but one that compels you to rely on Him. This burden is a divine assignment, and its enormity is a testament to the extraordinary trust God has placed in you to steward something far greater than you could ever imagine. Think about the weight of responsibility that comes with such a calling. A divine assignment is not about personal ambition or self-promotion. It is about serving a purpose that reaches beyond your individual needs and impacts the lives of others. It is a task so significant that it humbles you, reminding you that you cannot accomplish it alone. This is intentional, for God's call always demands partnership with Him. He gives you a burden bigger than yourself so that you will lean on His strength, wisdom, and guidance to see it fulfilled. Consider Moses, a man called to lead an entire nation out of slavery and into freedom. When God appeared to him in the burning bush, Moses was overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. He questioned his abilities, saying, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Exodus 3:11. Moses saw himself as inadequate, but God saw him as chosen. The burden Moses carried was not about his own capacity, but about his willingness to trust God's power. Leading millions of people through the wilderness for 40 years required more than human strength or strategy. It required faith in a God who could part the Red Sea, rain manna from heaven, and bring water from a rock. Moses carried a burden that was beyond his human capabilities, but it was precisely this burden that allowed God's glory to be revealed through him. When you are chosen by God, the burden you carry will often feel impossible. It will stretch you, challenge you, and cause you to confront your own limitations. This is not to discourage you, but to draw you closer to God. The size of the burden is a reflection of the size of the impact you are meant to have. If the vision God has given you does not intimidate you, it is likely not from Him. Divine assignments are always greater than the person carrying them because they are meant to accomplish God's purposes, not just human plans. Think about Nehemiah, who carried the burden of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. He was not a construction expert or a political leader. He was a cupbearer to the king. Yet when he heard about the state of his people and his city, he was moved to tears and prayer. The burden on Nehemiah's heart drove him to take action. Even though the task was monumental, he faced opposition, discouragement, and threats, but his commitment to the assignment never wavered. Nehemiah's story reminds us that the burden God places on your heart is often the key to your purpose. When God entrusts you with a burden, it often comes with a deep sense of responsibility. You may feel a stirring in your spirit that you cannot ignore, a passion for a cause, a vision for change, or a desire to meet a specific need. This burden is not random, it is divinely planted. It is God's way of revealing the role He has prepared for you in His kingdom. But carrying a burden bigger than yourself also comes with challenges. You may face moments of doubt, wondering why God would choose you for such a task. You may feel unqualified, overwhelmed, or even tempted to give up. But remember this: God does not choose you because you are already capable. He chooses you because He plans to equip you. The burden is not a sign of your inadequacy, it is a sign of His trust in you. Look at Esther, a young woman who found herself in the palace of a king, carrying the burden of saving her people. When faced with the decision to risk her life by approaching the king, she could have easily walked away, thinking the task was too great for her. But Mordecai reminded her of her purpose, saying, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." Esther 4:14. Esther's willingness to carry the burden led to the deliverance of an entire nation. So when you feel the weight of a burden that seems bigger than you, take heart. It is a sign that God is working in and through you. The burden may feel heavy, but it is not yours to carry alone. God's Spirit will empower you, His wisdom will guide you, and His grace will sustain you. The assignment He has given you is extraordinary because He has chosen you to accomplish it. You may not feel ready, and you may not feel strong, but that is the point. God's assignments are designed to magnify His power through your weakness. Your willingness to say yes to the burden is what allows His glory to shine through your life. So embrace the burden, for it is a divine privilege to be entrusted with something so significant. When God chooses you, His favor becomes evident in your life in ways that cannot be explained by human reasoning. Favor is one of the clearest and most powerful signs of divine selection. It is God's way of placing His mark upon you, opening doors that no one can shut, and positioning you for opportunities that go far beyond your natural abilities. This favor often shows up in unexpected places, surprising even you, and leaving no doubt that God's hand is upon your life. Favor is not something you can earn, negotiate, or strategize your way into. It is not the result of your qualifications or your connections. It is a gift from God, bestowed upon those He has chosen for a divine purpose. When favor is at work in your life, you will find yourself standing in places you never imagined and receiving opportunities that you know you could never have orchestrated on your own. Think about the life of Joseph. Sold into slavery by his brothers, Joseph found himself in the house of Potiphar, an Egyptian official. From a human perspective, this seemed like a tragedy, a detour away from the dreams God had given him. Yet even in slavery, God's favor was with Joseph. The Bible says the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master, Genesis 39:2. Potiphar recognized that everything Joseph touched prospered and placed him in charge of his entire household. Even when Joseph was falsely accused and thrown into prison, God's favor did not leave him. In that dark and unexpected place, Joseph rose to a position of leadership, entrusted with the management of the prison. Eventually, this favor positioned him to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, leading to his promotion as the second most powerful man in Egypt. What seemed like setbacks were in fact setups for God's ultimate plan. The favor on Joseph's life opened doors in environments where no one could have expected him to thrive. This is the nature of God's favor. It operates beyond the limitations of human systems and circumstances. It creates opportunities where none should exist. It causes people to notice you, trust you, and elevate you, even when you seem unqualified by worldly standards. The favor is not about where you are, but about who is with you. When God's hand is upon you, His favor can manifest in the most unlikely places. Consider the story of Esther, a Jewish orphan who became queen in a foreign land. Esther's rise to prominence was not the result of her own efforts, but of God's favor. She was chosen out of many women to be queen, and this favor positioned her to save her people from destruction. When she approached the king, risking her life, the king extended his scepter to her, granting her favor and allowing her to plead her case. Esther's story demonstrates that God's favor can place you in positions of influence for purposes far greater than yourself. When favor is upon your life, it doesn't mean that everything will be easy or that you will never face challenges. In fact, favor often attracts opposition. People may question why you have been given certain opportunities or why doors seem to open for you. But favor is not about fairness, it is about God's purpose. It is His way of ensuring that His plans for your life are fulfilled. God's favor also has a way of making others notice you. Think about David, the shepherd boy who was overlooked by his own family when Samuel came to anoint a king. Yet God's favor singled him out. When David stood before Goliath, he was not a trained soldier, but God's favor gave him victory. That victory propelled David into a position of prominence, leading to his eventual kingship. Sometimes favor will place you in positions that feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. You may find yourself standing before powerful people, in rooms where decisions are made, or in situations where you feel out of place. But remember, favor is not about your comfort, it is about God's calling. He places you in those environments for a reason. Trust that if He has opened the door, He will also equip you to walk through it. When God's favor is at work, even your enemies can become instruments of His purpose. Proverbs 16:7 says, "When the Lord takes pleasure in anyone's way, He causes their enemies to make peace with them." This is the power of divine favor. It transcends human relationships, conflicts, and barriers. If you find yourself in a place where doors are opening unexpectedly, where opportunities are coming to you without explanation, or where people are helping you in ways that don't make sense, recognize that this is God's favor at work. It is His confirmation that you are chosen, His way of positioning you for the assignment He has prepared for you. So walk boldly in the favor of God. Do not be surprised when you find yourself in rooms where you don't seem to belong or in positions you never imagined. These are not accidents, they are divine appointments. God's favor is not just a blessing, it is a responsibility. It is a sign that He has placed something extraordinary within you and is aligning circumstances to ensure that His purpose is fulfilled in your life. One of the most remarkable signs of being chosen by God is the gift of vision, the ability to see what others overlook. This is not merely the ability to observe what is happening around you, but a deeper spiritual insight, a God-given capacity to discern opportunities, solutions, and potential that others fail to recognize. When God chooses you, He sharpens your perspective, enabling you to perceive things through the lens of His purpose and promises. Vision is a divine compass. It guides you, shapes your decisions, and helps you navigate the complexities of life with clarity and confidence. It allows you to look beyond the surface and recognize what lies beneath. While others see problems, you see possibilities. Where others encounter obstacles, you discern opportunities. This ability to see differently is not a skill you acquire, it is a gift that flows from your connection to God. Think about Noah, a man chosen by God to build an ark in preparation for a flood that no one else could imagine. When God revealed His plan, Noah saw what others could not. He began constructing a massive ark on dry land, enduring ridicule and doubt from those around him. Why? Because Noah had vision. He trusted what God had shown him and acted on it, even when it seemed illogical to others. Noah's ability to see beyond the present reality saved his family and preserved humanity. This gift of vision is not limited to seeing physical possibilities, it also involves spiritual discernment. It allows you to recognize the hand of God in situations where others see chaos. It gives you the wisdom to understand that challenges are not setbacks but setups for God's greater plan. Vision enables you to interpret the seasons of life with faith, knowing that God is working all things together for good. Consider the story of Caleb and Joshua, 2 of the 12 spies sent to explore the promised land. While the other 10 spies focused on the giants in the land and the apparent impossibility of conquest, Caleb and Joshua saw something different. They recognized the potential of the land and trusted in God's promise. Their vision was not clouded by fear but illuminated by faith. While the majority saw obstacles, Caleb and Joshua saw opportunities. Their spiritual insight set them apart and ultimately positioned them to inherit what God had promised. When you are chosen by God, this ability to see what others overlook often becomes a source of both inspiration and challenge. You may find yourself frustrated when others fail to understand what seems so clear to you. You may encounter resistance or skepticism from people who cannot grasp your perspective. But remember, vision is not given to everyone, it is entrusted to those who are called to lead, innovate, and pioneer. Your insight is not just for your benefit, it is meant to guide others and bring them into alignment with God's purposes. Vision also equips you to solve problems in unconventional ways. Think about David as a young shepherd standing before Goliath. While others saw an insurmountable giant, David saw an opportunity for God's power to be demonstrated. His spiritual insight allowed him to approach the situation differently. David did not rely on the traditional methods of warfare. He used what God had already equipped him with: a sling and 5 smooth stones. His vision led to a victory that no one else thought possible. This ability to see differently is not without responsibility. Vision requires faith, courage, and action. It is not enough to see the possibilities, you must also step into them. You must trust what God has revealed to you, even when it defies logic or popular opinion. Vision demands obedience to God's leading, even when the path is unclear. When you are chosen by God, your spiritual insight becomes your greatest asset. It helps you navigate situations where natural understanding falls short. It enables you to discern the voice of God amidst the noise of the world. This insight is your compass, pointing you toward the fulfillment of your divine assignment. At times, your vision may set you apart. You may feel isolated or misunderstood, but do not let that discourage you. Vision is a mark of divine selection, and it often places you ahead of your time. Like Joseph, whose dreams set him apart from his brothers, your ability to see differently may initially create conflict. But in time, it will become clear that your vision was not just for you, but for the benefit of others. So, embrace the gift of vision. Do not ignore what God has shown you, even if it seems small or insignificant. Trust that He has given you this insight for a reason. Your ability to see what others overlook is a sign that you are chosen, a confirmation that you are part of God's greater plan. Use your vision as a guide, a source of hope, and a tool to bring His purposes to life. For when you walk by faith and not by sight, God will lead you into places that others cannot even imagine. When God chooses you, He does not wait for the perfect circumstances to call you. He does not wait for all the pieces to fit together, nor does He ensure that the path ahead is neatly laid out. Instead, God calls you in moments of uncertainty, when the way forward seems unclear, and the only assurance you have is His voice. This is a hallmark of divine selection. Obedience is required, even when clarity is absent. Obedience in uncertainty is not about understanding, it is about trust. It is about believing that the one who has called you is faithful to guide you. When God calls you, He does not give you the full picture immediately because He desires a relationship built on faith, not on sight. If you could see every step of the journey, you would rely on your own understanding rather than His wisdom. Obedience, therefore, becomes the evidence of your trust in Him. Think about Abram, later known as Abraham, whom God called to leave his country, his people, and his father's household to go to a land that God would show him. Notice the ambiguity in that call, "Go to the land I will show you," Genesis 12:1. God did not provide Abram with a map or a detailed plan. He simply gave him a command and a promise. Abram obeyed, not because he understood where he was going, but because he trusted the one who was leading him. This kind of obedience requires courage. It demands that you step out of your comfort zone, leave behind what is familiar, and walk into the unknown with nothing but God's word to sustain you. It is not easy, but it is necessary. Obedience in uncertainty is what aligns you with God's will and positions you to receive His promises. Consider the story of Peter walking on water. When Jesus called Peter to step out of the boat and walk toward Him, the conditions were far from ideal. The wind was strong, the waves were high, and logic would have told Peter to stay in the safety of the boat. Yet Peter obeyed, stepping onto the water in faith. As long as his focus remained on Jesus, he walked on water, defying natural laws. This moment was not about Peter's ability, but about his willingness to trust and obey, even in uncertainty. When God calls you, the timing often feels inconvenient, and the instructions may seem incomplete. You may find yourself wrestling with questions: why now? How will this work? What if I fail? But obedience is not about having all the answers. It is about responding to God's voice. It is about saying, yes, Lord, even when you don't know how everything will unfold. Think about Mary, the young woman chosen to carry the Savior of the world. When the angel Gabriel appeared to her, the magnitude of the call was overwhelming. Mary asked, how will this be? Luke 1:34, a question rooted in her human understanding of impossibility. Yet her ultimate response was one of obedience. I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. Luke 1:38. Mary's willingness to obey, despite her uncertainty, allowed her to become part of God's eternal plan. Obedience in uncertainty is also a test of your faith. It reveals whether you trust God more than your own reasoning. It is easy to obey when the path is clear and the outcome is guaranteed. But true faith is demonstrated in moments of ambiguity. When you choose to follow God's lead without knowing where He is taking you, you declare your dependence on Him. This kind of obedience often requires sacrifice. You may have to let go of your plans, your timeline, or your comfort. But every act of obedience positions you for greater revelation and blessing. It is through obedience that God begins to order your steps, aligning your life with His divine purpose. Remember, God's call is not about your ability to see the way, it is about His ability to make a way. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea with the Egyptian army closing in behind them, they faced what seemed like an impossible situation. Yet Moses obeyed God's instruction to lift his staff, and the sea parted. The obedience of one man in a moment of uncertainty led to the deliverance of an entire nation. If you are in a season where God is calling you to step out in faith despite the ambiguity, take heart. This is not a sign of His absence, but of His trust in you. He is inviting you to partner with Him in a journey that will require your faith and obedience. Trust that He knows the way even when you do not. Trust that He will provide the resources, the wisdom, and the strength you need as you move forward. Obedience in uncertainty is not about having all the answers. It is about trusting the one who does. It is about taking the first step, knowing that God will reveal the next step in His perfect timing. Your willingness to obey, even in the unknown, is what allows His purpose to unfold in your life. Trust Him, and He will direct your path. As we reflect on these powerful signs of God's divine choice, let us understand that being chosen by God is both a privilege and a responsibility. It is a call to align our lives with His purpose, to walk in obedience despite uncertainty, to embrace vision that sees beyond the ordinary, and to steward the favor that opens doors no man can shut. It is a journey that often comes with challenges, yet each trial is a refining fire, preparing you for the extraordinary assignment God has placed within you. You were not chosen by accident. You are part of a grand design, intricately woven into God's eternal plan. When you face challenges, let them remind you of the treasure within you. When the task feels too big, remember it is not about your strength, but His power working through you. And when the path seems unclear, trust that the one who called you is faithful to guide your every step. God's choice is His vote of confidence in you, a declaration that you are needed in this world. So rise up and walk boldly in your calling. Let your life be a testament to the God who chooses the ordinary to accomplish the extraordinary. This world is waiting for what God has placed in you. Do not shrink back, do not question your worth, and do not be afraid. You are chosen, and that changes everything. Go forth and fulfill your purpose, knowing that heaven backs you, the Spirit of God empowers you, and His favor surrounds you. You were chosen for such a time as this. So live like it, lead like it, and shine like it. The world is watching, and God is glorified through your obedience. Amen.